Raghunath Das Goswami ki.
Jai.
Shri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami ki.
Jai.
Shri Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami ki.
Jai.
Shri Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Shri Gurudev ki.
Jai.
Vaishnav Sangha ki.
Jai.
Swagatam Suswagatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om Agyanti Dasya Gyananjala Sharakaya Shakshu Militam Yena Tashmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupam Kadamayam Darati Shvapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shah Shri Rupa Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Samjivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Upesh Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchani Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Panamami Haripriye Vanshakalpa Taruvasha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna. So we will start with Srila Raghunath Das Goswami. So just imagine the scene, try to visualize. Raghunath Das Goswami used to reside on the banks of the Radhakund. You all have been to Vrindavan, hopefully. And at this time, Radhakund was a choto. Choto means small, very small pond. Kupur. We say in Hindi or Bengali. So, at times, Raghunath Das Goswami would meditate on how to enlarge the kund, because such a small kund. And then he would check himself while doing so, because, I'm not supposed to embark on big projects that requires lots of money. So he would, check himself. And around the same time, one very wealthy merchant, Seth is a category of merchants, S-E-T-H, Seth. At that time he was in Badarikashram, up in the Himalayas, and he had walked all the way there, to great austerity, and there he quite reverently worshipped Badrinarayan, Sri Badrinarayan. The deities are there, Lakshmi Narayan. It's in the Himalayas. And he offered lots of wealth to the feet, lotus feet of the Lord. And that night, that merchant, that wealthy merchant, he had a dream. In that dream, the Lord told him, you please take that wealth and bring it to Raghunath Das Goswami in Vrindavan. So he felt, I can imagine you, if you have such a dream yourself, how do you feel in the morning when you wake up? You can well imagine how he felt. Totally enjoyed, totally, appreciative. And immediately embarked on that journey down to Vrindavan. And he offered, the Lord had told him in the dream, in case he refuses, you please tell him that it's on my behalf for the sake of enlarging those two kunds, Shema Kund and Radha Kund. So the merchant did so, he walked all the way, and he met with Raghunath Das Goswami, and he made that plea. Please accept this donation on behalf of Badari Kashram, Lord Badari Kashram. Badrinarayan, sorry. And then he accepted, readily Raghunath Das Goswami accepted the offer. And immediately they started digging the two kunds, which are today, you have seen, quite large. And on the way of the construction, it happens that there are 5 trees there. Who are those 5 trees? The Pandavas. Trees, the trees. And trees means les arbres. So the constructor, as they choked out the plan to enlarge the kund, they figured out, well, we're going to have to cut the trees. So that night, Raghunath Das Goswami had a dream also. And the Pandavas in person appeared. You cannot cut us like this. No way. So, and of course they were spared. And still today you can take darshan. I don't know if you've been to that side. You can take darshan. I think only bean tree is left, if I'm not mistaken.
4 of them.
I think they are gone. We are talking about 50 centuries later now. Of course, talking about, 5, 6 centuries since Raghunath came. Anyway, so they enlarged. With that money, he enlarged. We have to engage everything in the Lord's service. And not only that, but also, near those 2 kunds, they arranged some kunjas for the 8th principle Saki. Raghunath Das Goswami, he arranged for that also, to prepare the kunjas nearby. So we can well imagine Raghunath Das Goswami was totally drowning himself in ecstasy. So we have to understand, we are back in the 15th century, 16th century I would say. It's total jungle in Vrindavan. Tigers, lions, wild animals are there. And of course those Goswamis, they are in the highest order of renunciation. They have no fixed residence. One day this tree, another day sleeping on the banks of the Yamuna. Manasi Ganga, they just roam about. Raghunath Das Goswami used to offer 2,000 times a day Dandavat to Vaishnavas. Plus, of course, its daily quota of 16 rounds? No, 64 rounds. 1 lakh. In those days, it's called a Lakeshwar. Lakeshwar means someone who chants 1 lakh. 1 lakh means 100,000 rounds. Names. That's 64. Actually, Mahaprabhu himself would not accept an invitation unless you chant 64. He would send his servant Govind ahead of him to find out, is he a Lakeshwar? If you're not a Lakeshwar, you cannot dream even to invite Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, one day, Sanatana Goswami, he came to take lunch with Gopal Bhatta Goswami. And as you may remember, Gopal Bhatta Goswami, another Goswami of the six, he had his kutir on the bank of Manasi Ganga. So when Sanatana Goswami came, he went to the Manasi Ganga to wash his hands, and he took bath actually. And he saw, right there, he saw Raghunath Das Goswami, who was in meditation, total steeped in meditation. And also who was drinking there, two animals. They were not antelopes, they were tigers, wild tigers, quenching their thirst. So, and nearby was Raghunath Das Goswami. He was so absorbed, and we have to understand that they are Vishnu Parikar, all these great souls, they are manjaris, coming from the spiritual world. So at this level, it's mentioned in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, especially starting from Raganuga Bhakti, there is two types of activities. One is sadhaka-rup, we are sadhakas, isn't it? We practice with our external senses. But at this level of devotion, they have both sadhaka-rup and siddha-rup, or siddha-deha. They have internal activities directly with the Lord. So they are totally oblivious to the outer world. They are not in the outer consciousness. They cannot even, Raghunath Das Goswami, it is mentioned, they don't even notice the tigers. They are totally absorbed in steep meditation. Sometimes they enter it's called Lila Spurti. Shri Shri Radha Govinda Madhav ki. Shri Krishna Balaram ki jai. Shri Gaunitai ki jai. Lila Spurti, they even enter. Spurti means quick. They have darshan of the Lila. They can even enter into the Lila while their body is in meditation on the banks of the Manasi Ganga. They have twofold activities. So anyway, Sanatana Goswami beheld the scene. He just came to take his bath. He saw the two tigers. He saw Raghunath Das Goswami nearby in steep meditation. And lo and behold, in the back of the scene, whom did he see? Not yet. Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna was keeping an eye. Can you imagine? He was keeping an eye to make sure his devotee is safe. Sanatana Goswami saw the whole picture. So then immediately, Sanatana Goswami is considered Shri Radha Govinda Madhav ki jai, Shri Krishna Balaram ki jai, Gaunitai. Immediately, Sanatana Goswami is considered the eldest of all, by age and by seniority. He's even the guru of Rupa Goswami. So he told him, you please build yourself a kutir, a hut. Days are passing by, weeks, months, and still Raghunath Das Goswami hadn't bothered to build a hut. So another day, he's sitting in the noonday sun. Vrindavan, you may well imagine what it is like. It's 45, 50, no problem. And Sanatana Goswami, again, could see the scene. This time Srimati Radharani herself, with the veil of her sari, she was protecting the head of Raghunath Das Goswami while he was steeped in meditation. And herself, she was transpiring profusely. So Sanatana Goswami this time, if I may say, got on his case. Told him, you have to build the hut. And this time he did. So this is the type of personality we are talking about here. So as we know from the Shastra, Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, there's two camps. What are those two camps? In the spiritual world, there are two camps, two types of main leader amongst the gopis. Srimati Radharani, and her cousin sister is named Sandhavali. So, and each group is quite keen on sticking to their leaders. There's no mixing on that level. They appreciate, but there's no mixing. So, obviously, in our line, Gaudiya Vaishnava, we claim ourselves to pertain to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is himself Radhabhav Duti Suvaritam Mami Krishna Swarupam. He is himself Krishna, but in the mood and in the duty, the complexion of Srimati Radharani. So we can well understand that all the acharyas coming in that line are also themselves Gaudiya. And Gaudiya actually means, what's the meaning of Gaudiya? Anyone knows? Gaudiya. We say Gaudiya Vaishnava. Sorry? No. Gauda means Bengal. Gauda means Gaudadesh. Bengal. So Gaudiya basically means Vaishnava from Bengal. But why do we claim Bengal? What happened in Bengal in the 15th century? Who came? Chaitanya. So when we say actually Gaudiya Vaishnavas, it implies worshippers of Srimati Radharani in the form of Mahaprabhu. Technically, Vaishnav means devotees of Vishnu. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explained this point. Kaishnas means devotees of Krishna. One time Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was doing parikrama of Radhakund, much later, in 19th century. He came across another group of Gujarati Vaishnava. They were doing the parikrama but anti-clockwise. Then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur stopped. And he said, why are they doing anti-clockwise? And we're doing clockwise. So, please, dear Vaishnavas, try to come up with the answer. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explained, they worship Srimati Radharani, meaning the Gujarati Vaishnavas. Gujarati means Pushti Marg. They worship Bal Gopal, basically. So he went on to say, they worship Srimati Radharani because Krishna happens to like her. But their Ishtadev is Krishna. Krishna likes Srimati Radharani, hence we like Srimati Radharani. We love Srimati Radharani. But Bhaktisiddhanta added, we are Gaudiya. We're doing clockwise. We like Krishna because Srimati Radharani happens to love Krishna. But our Ishtadev is Srimati Radharani. That's the meaning of Gaudiya. Gaudiya means Bengal, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Mahaprabhu? Krishna in the mood of Radha. That's our line. So here, back to the Lila, Srimati Radharani, Chandravali, they have unlimited maidservants under them. And according to the mellows of Paramur, Parakriya Ras, Raghunath Das Goswami, he himself is a maidservant. His ontological position, as I told you, Siddha Deha, is a manjari. These personalities are not Nitya Bada like us or like me, eternally conditioned. No. They came in their ontological position. They were manjaris in the spiritual world, they appear in Golila, they may change their gender, they become male. It's not a problem for them. They still retain their ontological position. So we know, for the sake of the Lila, Chandravali is the main competitor of Srimati Radharani. So all these great devotees, he used to be called Sridas Goswami. In those days they used to call him Sridas Goswami. They would never venture into this part of Vrindavan dealing with Chandravali. Never. They stick to their territories, if I may say. you know. And one day, there was one Brajbasi. His name was Shridas Brajbasi. And he used to bring to Raghunath Das Goswami 1 cup of buttermilk. Can you imagine? Raghunath Das Goswami would eat 1 cup of buttermilk every other day. That was provided by this Prabhu, Shridas Brajbasi. So one day, Shridas Brajbasi, he went to that the kund of Chandravali, and he saw like a nice tree. It's called Sakistali. That place is called Sakistali. He was a Gopa himself in those days. He was herding the cows. And he saw a big palash tree. We don't have those trees here. Palash. They have big cups, big leaves. So from that leaf he can make a cup. He knew, I can make a nice cup. I can offer the cup full of buttermilk to Raghunath Das Goswami. That was his intent. So immediately he brought the cup full of buttermilk to Das Goswami. And Raghunath Das Goswami was quite impressed by the largeness of the cup, of the leaf. He said, where did you get that leaf? I got it in Sakistali. Sakistali. No way. He threw away that cup. Can you imagine? And this is how steep they are in their faithfulness to Srimati Radharani. They're quite faithful. This is just... So this Prabhu, it was quite impressed, amazed by the attitude of worship that Raghunath Das Goswami had for Srimati Radharani. So another lila, obviously, as I told you, they are totally, practically, they practice like us, but most of the time they are steeped in their meditation, and with their siddha deha, they can go into the lilas. So in his meditation, he was cooking sweet rice, and he was offering the sweet rice to Sri Radha and Krishna. So they accepted the offering, and they partook the prasad, all of them, with all the sakis. They relished the prasad. And he himself, Raghunath Das Goswami, in his siddha deha, siddha rup, he also joined that feast. And he tended to overeat. So now back to the material world, back to external Vrindavan, 16th century. He used to give classes every afternoon on Mahaprabhu, because Raghunath Das Goswami, he had extensive encounter with Mahaprabhu. That afternoon he didn't give class. By then he had his kutir. So devotees were a bit perplexed. They knocked on the door, no answer. And finally they heard a faint voice, I'm not well today. So immediately they conveyed the message. As I told you, the main leader in those days was Sanatana Goswami. Sanatana Goswami was in Mathura at that time, and he was spending his time with Vitalji. Vitalji is one of the sons of Balabhacharya. Very great soul. Also Nitya. They are Parshad, Vishnu Parshad themselves. Immediately the news were reported to Sanatana Goswami all the way to Mathura. This Vitalji, he dispatched 2 doctors on the go to go and check the health of Raghunath Das Goswami. So they, did the diagnostic, diagnosed the health, and then they figured out, well, he has an indigestion. Indigestion. But how could it be? He's such a frugal eater. 1 cup of buttermilk every other day. How can you have an indigestion? So it was like a dichotomy, how could it be? And finally, it was, of course he would not reveal right away what happened, because devotees were perplexed, they could not figure it out. But then finally, after some time, he admitted, I overate in that feast in the spiritual world. So this is just to share, the level of Raghunath Das Goswami. We'll move on. He has actually the personal Govardhan Shila that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu worshipped for 3 years. He gave it to him. He gave it to Raghunath Das Goswami. And still today, this Shila has been handed over all the way to us. At one point, there was Rup Kaviraj, he used to worship that Shila. That Shila is still visible in Gokulananda Mandir, Vrindavan. So, perhaps some notes on the Shila worship, because Srila Prabhupada mentions in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, of course he's quoting his Guru Maharaj in his Anubhashya, that some people are so rascal, we have to say that, because they consider the Shila as just a mere stone. So Srila Prabhupada addresses that in purport on Cellula 6-94. Very important point. We know the verse, Padma Puran, Arche Vishnu, Shiladir. If you consider the stone of Govardhan a Vaishnava according to his place of birth, Guru as an ordinary person, Naraki, you are infested with a Naraki, hellish mentality. Your destination will be Naraki. Padma Puran explained that. So some people even venture to say, well, this is a stone for him because he's not a Brahman. And we have to understand Smarta Brahmanism has killed India, not only India, has killed spirituality in the universe, I would say. Even in Europe, we were also plagued by this nonsense of Smarta Brahmanism. What do you think? In the Middle Ages in Europe, the kings rejected the Vatican and the Anglican, especially the Vatican, because they themselves they were involved into all kinds of nonsense during the Middle Ages. So then the kings rejected in one go the hegemony of the clergy, and unfortunately they ran on their own and then collapsed. That is why it's so important to maintain Brahmanical conduct. So back to that point on the stone. He's not a Brahmin, so it cannot be a Shila for him. It's just mere stone. So even in those days. So Mahaprabhu instructed, on the contrary, he instructed Raghunath Das Goswami how to worship this Shila. Okay. So this is the verse. Worship this Shila in the mode of goodness like a perfect Brahmin. By such worship, you will surely attain ecstatic love for Krishna, without delay. So he has written quite a few books, Stavavali, Dan Charit, Mukta Charit. And he left today from the earthly realm. I don't have the year, sorry about that. He was born in 1504, so a bit after Mahaprabhu. Okay, so Raghunath Bhatta Goswami is another great stalwarts. They're all luminaries. We have to understand they are luminaries in the firmament of the spiritual sky. Especially this. Like Teacher Maharaj used to say, we belong to the most aristocratic lineage of the spiritual world. Why? Because Shri Rup Manjari Pada, we are stemming from that line. Rupa Goswami, Rupa Manjari. And he himself, herself, we could say, he is the main Manjari in the spiritual world. So this is the most aristocratic lineage that we belong to by the grace of Srila Prabhupada. Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, another great of the six, he was walking from Varanasi to Puri on foot. There's no rickshaw. And he had met the Lord, of course. remember the story. Mahaprabhu went to, when he was a Grihastha, he went to East Bengal, now it's called Bangladesh, but in those days, East Bengal, to make a living. Mahaprabhu had to make a living, he was a Grihastha. So, that was with his first wife actually. At that time his first wife she stayed in Mayapur, in Navadvip, and he himself went to East Bengal to give discourses, katha, and he would get donation. That's how he used to make his living. This is when he met those two great devotees, whose names are, they are connected to Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, try to remember. Who is the father of Raghunath Bhatta Goswami? Tapanishra. Excellent. And his friend, his dearmost friend, always together, Chandrasekhar. Oh dear Chandrasekhar. This is Chandrasekhar Acharya Prabhu from that time. And Mahaprabhu, when he was in East Bengal teaching, there was this great devotee, Tapan Mishra. He was a Brahmin, but he was still baffled as to what is the goal of life. Even though he was practicing and all, but he had some perplexity on the Siddhant, what is the object of worship, to whom should I turn my attention, to whom should I worship. He was a bit perplexed. And Mahaprabhu obviously shed transcendental light on this devotee Tapan Mishra. And he came to one of the class of Mahaprabhu, and of course Mahaprabhu by then his repute was far and wide. And he told the Lord, you are full of compassion and very lowly fallen, please enlighten me. So Mahaprabhu asked him to introduce himself, and then he did, and Mahaprabhu preached to him. And he told him, this is in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adilila. In each age the Lord advanced himself. In which form does the Lord advance in Satyayug? What is the type of worship in Satyayug? Meditation, Ashtanga Yoga. And the Lord, this is how we worship Him. In Treta Yuga, Yakya, Treta Yuga, Ramayana, this is Treta Yuga. Dwapara Yuga, Deity worship. And in our age, Yagya Sankirtan Prayer Yajantihi Sumitasaha. So, Harinam. So Mahaprabhu immediately he imparted this knowledge to him. So he told him, and immediately he was a very malleable devotee, quite ready to be instructed. He didn't object anything. He accepted the process wholeheartedly. Abhinatvam Namanami Noho, there's no difference between the holy names and the Lord Himself. The Lord told him. And He gave him an instruction. He told him, you please, I'm going back to Navadvip, but yourself and your good wife, you please proceed to Kashi. Kashi means Varanasi, Benares. It's a very old city. So the Tapan Mishra was quite obedient. As the Lord left, he also left with his wife, but towards Varanasi. Some years passed. In the meantime, Lord took sannyas. In which year? 1510. He took sannyas. And he came, of course, on the way to, actually he was on the way to Vrindavan. He went through the big forest, the lila is there in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. What's the name of the forest? Jharikand. And there was only one devotee accompanying him. We know the lila, all the tigers and antelopes and rhinoceros chanting Hare Krishna. Only Srila Prabhupada says, he can do that, I cannot do that, but at least I can make the humans sing Hare Krishna. That's, Mahaprabhu can do that. They can you imagine, they will leave the animosity towards one another, especially the carnivores. They have animosity towards the herbivores. And they chant. Only the Lord can do that. On the way he came out, and then he reached Benares. And at that time, Tapan Mishra had been there for a few years. He was taking bath. Manikarnika Ghat. Ganga is there in Benares. And he could hear resounding Haribol, Haribol, Haribol. And groups of sannyasis were singing Hare Krishna. And amongst them, one much taller than the others. So this Tapan Mishra was taken aback. Who could it be? Then he figured out must be only Mahaprabhu. And then he parted through the crowd and he managed to get close. And immediately Chaitanya Mahaprabhu recognized him. And Tapan Mishra invited him to his place to Prashad. Tears of ecstasy, sorry. Mahaprabhu and they are eternal companions actually, Tapan Mishra also. So upon arriving in the house of Tapan Mishra, Abhishek, this is how you worship a great personality, your guru, even a senior devotee. They drank the Abhishek, all the family members. And who was there as one of the sons? Raghunath Bhatta. This is how we hear from him, from that line, Tapan Mishra. So, now back to the first picture. He's walking from Varanasi. He has grown up now. He's walking from Varanasi to Puri. And he's figuring out in his mind, will he recognize me? I was just a boy. He's got so many stalwart devotees around him. He's a sannyasi. Most probably will not recognize me. So finally Raghunath Bhatta, he reached Puri. And you can well imagine, immediately the Lord recognized him. And did you notice, great devotees, even in ISKCON, they are very good in remembering you, or remembering anyone. I remember my Guru Maharaj, Bhakti Guru Maharaj, it was quite amazed because he would see someone that he hasn't seen for 12 years, 13 years, still he remembered the name. How are you? And the person will be taken aback. How come? Yes, Maharaj, that's me. How do you remember my name? Even the person is perplexed. So this is one particularity of great souls. They're very personal in their remembrance also. Not only face to face, but we are jivis, we are distinct souls. So they acknowledge, yes, this person. It may not be even a devotee. I mean, the garden of a devotee, still learning, still he remembers the name. What to speak of Raghunath Bhatta. Because just remember, when he came to his father's house, the young boy was serving him. Just like, who else was doing that? Remember? Gopal Bhatta Goswami, same story. The Lord went in this house in Sri Ranganath, Rangakshetra. He saw Venkat, what's his name of the father? Venkat Bhatt. Invited him over for 4 months at Thomasya, and the young boy, Gopal Bhatt, served him. Same type of happenings. So, immediately the Lord recognized him, and he was sent off to Vrindavan. To Vrindavan. He joined the others. One thing which is particular with Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, from what I could gather, he had no personal deities. Who was his deity? Which is not different from a deity.
Goswami?
No, the Srimad Bhagavatam. We have to let's hear about that because it's quite. He would sing the Srimad Bhagavatam in 3 different meters. When he would sing in the Srimad Bhagavatam out there in the nature, the birds would stop singing. And another particularity of his great devotee, he was such a good cook. They say he was as good a cook as Srimati Radharani. can well imagine who is this person. Shrimad Bhagavatam, cooking. So Mahaprabhu gave Raghunath Bhatta his own neck beads. Can you imagine? And a Tulsi garland, we are in Puri now, a 14 hands in length Tulsi garland of the Lord Jagannath. And of course, betel and pan remnants of the Lord. So, that his place of worship is near Madan Mohan. Be careful, not the main Madan Mohan that we know in Vrindavan. There's another Madan Mohan in Vrindavan, which is near the Radha Vallabha Mandir. And there, if you go there, there's a Gadada Bhatt pit. And you find the Srimad Bhagavatam there of that Raghunath Bhatta was reading. So, whose disciple was he? Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, which, I'll give you a clue, from the Panchatattva. Gadada Pandit. He was the disciple of Gadada Pandit. Who is he? There's a book, as you know, Golkanadesh Tipika, is Ragamanjari. He left today in 1579, 16th century. Okay, next. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Such a great person also. So, all the great devotees practically are born in Bengal. Nadia means Nadia Godrum. So physicians, the family is family of physicians. Village of Jabatpur, near Badarman, near Nehati. Father Bhagirat, Sri Bhagirat, mother Sri Sunanda. And he had a younger brother, this is important, Shyamdas. The story happened there. It's mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita. What happened? They were actually, the deity family and the family deity Go Nityananda, Go Nitai, installed by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami himself. It's still being worshipped today. So, but it's mentioned by Srila Prabhupada that family line age of Krishnadas Kaviraj disappeared. There's no more today. So there's a very important instruction for us here in the Lila, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. There's another book, Ananda Ratnavali. If you want to know more about Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, you read Ananda Ratnavali. But listen to that event, chapter 5, Adilila. Why did he live his family life? Why? Something triggered that living. There was one great stalwart disciple of Nityananda Prabhu, whose name was, let's see if you remember, Sriminiketan Ramdas. He was totally beyond words in description, a reservoir of love, endowed with all the Astasatvika bhav, symptoms of love. Sometimes he would climb on your shoulder, sometimes one limb would get paralyzed, the other would be trembling, totally avadut. So he came who? He came where? In the house of the brother of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, whose name is Shyamdas. And there he was chanting, they had kirtan, and as I said, he was quite unpredictable, this personality. Miniketan Ramdas. But yet he was well honored and worshipped. Everyone fell at his feet. But there was one, the local Brahmin, the family Brahmin who was worshipping the deities. His name was Gunanava, Shri Gunanava Mishra. One way or the other, this Brahmin didn't pay obeisances to this great soul, Miniketan Ramdas. Immediately, doom befell on him. This is the first instruction. We have to be very careful with worshipping great souls, worshipping everyone actually. More we are advanced, more we worship everyone, even we respect at least non-devotees. So anyway, back to the story. He didn't pay obeisances. Just like what did Miniketan Ramdas said? Oh, there's another Romaharshan Sutta. Romaharshan Sutta. Who was Romaharshan Sutta? Father of Sutta Goswami. And he got beheaded by whom? Lord Balaram. Same point. He didn't step, he didn't sit up, he didn't stand up, when the Lord came. And with the blade of Christ, he beheaded him. Miniketan didn't do that. But basically, he spoke. He spoke out. Well, he didn't speak much. Here I find the second Romaharshan Sutta who didn't stand to show honor when he saw Lord Balaram. That's all he said. He left. He danced. He sang to his heart's content. The Brahman didn't become angry. Gunanava Mishra didn't become angry because he was engaging himself into deity worship at the time. When he came out, the brother came out, Shyamdas, his big brother. Who is the big brother? Krishna. He rebuked him badly. How could it be? This is the half logic of the half hen. You feed the hen and you don't. You get the eggs and you don't even feed the hen. This is the logic of Chanakya Pandita. Meaning you worship one brother and not the other. That was the plea. That was the problem of Gunanava Mishra. He accepts Mahaprabhu. He doesn't accept Nityananda Prabhu. Thus, he didn't pay worship to Gunanava Mishra, to Miniketan Ramdas. It's mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, you are a Pashandi if you do so. Pashandi means Nashtik, atheist. Immediately, got on his case. Then he told him, they are identical manifestations. If you don't worship Nityananda Prabhu, you will fall down. He kind of cursed him. And then he told him, better to be a full-fledged atheist. Can you imagine? By slighting both brothers than an hypocrite. Mahaprabhu, not Nityananda Prabhu. Then Ramdas, he perceived the whole discussion. He broke his flute and went away. That night, immediately the apparat is so powerful. The brother Sri Shyam Das fell down. That night also, Nityananda Prabhu appeared in the mind of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. He was not as yet Goswami. He told him the verse. I got the verse here. Are Krishnadas Nakaraha Baya Vrindavan Yaha Tanha Savakai Savalaria Hoy. You please go. I'm very happy with your intervention. You please go to Vrindavan. You will find all great happenings there. We know the story. He went there. He was very old. Right? It's mentioned his body was trembling. He was very feeble. He was around to 90 years old. He went to Vrindavan and he went to Madan Mohan Mandir, the big one, and a garland of the deities, Shishirada Madan Mohan fell on him. That was the indication that, yes. His intent was to write the leelas of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he got the clue from that, garland falling on him that yes, it is sanctioned. And also lots of devotees from Vrindavan approved of his desire to write a book. So it's the most important book for us. There's 2 books, even 3. Vrindavan is called the what is it called, the first one? Chaitanya Bhagavat, yes. Vrindavan Das Thakur, who is himself Srila Vyasadeva. Mostly dealing with the Grihastha Lila of the Lord, up to 24. And then we refer ourselves, Srila Prabhupada may have translated, perhaps if he had time, the Chaitanya Bhagavat, but fortunately, his Guru did. Fortunately, didn't have time for that. But we, mostly in ISKCON, we are accustomed to Chaitanya Charitamrita, as penned by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Some devotees approached him and told him, especially Lokanath Goswami, told him, you please don't mention my name. That is why you don't find much. Not only he, others also did. Specifically, they told him not to mention their names in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. He wrote Sri Govinda Lilamrit, very advanced book, not to be given to anyone. Krishna Karnamrita commentary. Krishna Karnamrita is a book of Bival Mangal Thakur. He wrote a commentary on that. And of course, Chaitanya Charitamrita. He was a disciple of? I'm a bit puzzled here. I thought he was a disciple of Nityananda Prabhu. Isn't he? And here it's written, he was a direct disciple of Rup Goswami and Srila Raghunath Das Goswami. So perhaps they assume Shiksha here. Because from what I understand, he is a disciple of Nityananda Prabhu. Can you please confirm, Prabhu?
When he's speaking Chaitanya Charitamrita, he says...
Yeah. So I guess he must be referring to Rup Goswami and Raghunath Das as Shiksha, I guess. Now that line is important for us because from that line, not directly, but came in that line of Krishnadas Kaviraj, Narottam Das Thakur, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and then we know Baladev Vidyabhushan, Jagannath Das Bhajma, Gaur Kishore, Bhaktisiddhanta. So this is the line actually. Hare Krishna, thank you very much. If you have any questions. Yes, Bhagavati Devidasi.
Hare Krishna. I said Lord Chaitanya is the most merciful.
He was merciful, yes?
He is the most merciful, Lord Chaitanya.
Yes.
But then it seems a bit severe that he wouldn't, accept prasadam from anybody who wasn't chanting, wasn't chanting a lack of names. It doesn't seem, it seems to me, out of character.
Well, I never read such a thing. He would not... Oh, you mean taking prasad?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry, I misunderstood your point. Okay. So, what is your question?
No, I'm just questioning the fact that he wouldn't take prasad unless somebody was a lavish one.
So you find it too drastic?
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be like the most merciful, the most fallen, accepting the most fallen from the Torah. But that doesn't, to me, that seems unfair.
Yeah, good point. Where we are in the context of the 16th century, I think he wants to create a precedent. Even Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur himself would say, in the 19th century, much closer to us, he would say someone who doesn't sing 64 is a dog. Is a dog. So this is, again, to, I would say, overemphasize the merciful nature of Srila Prabhupada. Because if it wasn't for him, Srila Prabhupada himself mentioned, none of you, talking to his disciples, none of you would have been initiated by my Guru. None of you. Including Tamal Krishna Maharaj and others. None of you. So we are, I think, Bhagavati, I would just answer, you can please others participate also, that this is the merciful nature of Srila Prabhupada. Because he bypassed even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in that sense, And he has, Kaladeshapatra, he has adjusted himself to the needs, the dire needs of the Westerns, the Videshi, dealing with hippies in New York. And remember in the beginning he was kind of imposing 64, then 32, then 16. So, he had to bend himself backwards basically to accommodate us. So that's my feeble answer. If anyone wants to add up to shed some light on that.
In this connection, Sri Prabhupada speaks about that, down to 60 rounds minimum. He says that but we see that the devotees are chanting sincerely without offense. Engaging in devotional service, they are doing very nice. But if they chant sincerely, avoiding offenses, and doing very nice, engaging in devotion.
Yeah.
Not just, okay, because you're strict, just to...
Yeah, there's some prerequisites. There's some prerequisites attached to it. There's some strings attached. So, yeah, it's a good point. Again, this is our saving grace. Srila Prabhupada is our saving grace, by all means. Can you imagine such a feat, such a tour de force, to be able to accommodate the highest siddhants, Ashintya Beda Bet Tattva, the highest lineage of the spiritual world, down to Lower East Side, New York in 65. I mean, what kind of tour de force? Without diluting the message, without adding, without subtracting. You have to be yourself Acharya of the highest caliber, highest order to do that. It was, of course, devotees, some of the devotees found faults with Prabhupada. He took money from the West, it's polluted money. It reminds me of, I'll finish with this, a lila with Puri Maharaj. Puri Maharaj, you may have met him, he's Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur disciple. His full name is, what is it, full name? Puri Maharaj, he was living nearby. Promote, Bhakti Promote. Practically one of the closest to Srila Prabhupada. Very, very close. He left 105 or something. So, at one point, they had, of course, encounters Srila Prabhupada himself. And Srila Prabhupada, he knew Puri Maharaj is a Paka Brahmin, very strict. And at one point, Puri Maharaj mentioned the fact that, slightly hinting at the fact that, well, it's the West, the Westerners, they are degraded and it's outcast. And Prabhupada could read that, not directly, of course, but indirectly, he could understand the indication. Later down the road, a few years later, Puri Maharaj wrote a letter to Srila Prabhupada. Please, Dhanandehi, I'm building a temple. You know the temple? Yeah, it's very close to Iskandar. Dhanandehi, please, donation for my temple. We are God brothers. Prabhupada replied, in the line of what he had told him before, I'm afraid that this money is contaminated. No, better not I give it to you. Very sorry about that, but I don't want to ruffle your grain, you're a Paka Brahmin. I would mostly abstain from doing that. I don't want to offend you with this money. Puri Maharaj replied, I'm chestmate. I'm chasemate. Eshekemat. Chasemate. Eshekemat. C'est de l'échec là. I'm chasing. So he had also the humor to understand. Srila Prabhupada ki. Srila Raghunath Das Goswami ki. Srila Raghunath Bhatta Goswami ki. Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami ki.
Six Goswami.
But you still operate from there? Okay. Because what happened is I have a small theological center institute. It has been invented by the board of examination of this kind. For so many years I've been teaching Bhakti Shastri, but from yesterday we got the permission to start teaching Bhakti Vedanta. Bhakti Vedanta. Okay. So perhaps I could give you a poster or something. Perhaps there are some devotees in the day who sometimes do it, and quite rare, but what do you think? So, you know, sometimes, because from what I know is we are the only one doing it in the world, actually. So, and it's a bona fide center, so it's important for us to convey the message there that if they feel uneasy to do it in English,
Where is the center? It's here?
it's online. It's in,
Oh, it's online.
yeah, it's online. I do also French and English. I do also English sometimes. But just yesterday on Dashara, on Nandidai, did you have one?
Yeah, please do share. I can give you my
your email? Yeah, to the email.
Look Chen and
I'll give you my card.
oh, perfect. I can
This is in French, but this is the card of the institute. Thank you for really appreciate because I know in UK there's so many
And
devotees.
this is it.
Yeah, Madhavendra Puri and my mail, my phone, my laptop, everything is here.
Perfect. Okay. So I'll email you on this.
Yeah.